From gleaming skyscrapers to sprawling suburbs, America presents an image of endless prosperity and opportunity. But venture beyond the headlines and tourist destinations, and you'll discover a very different story. Across this nation, entire regions have been systematically left behind, economically devastated, physically crumbling, and watching their populations hemorrhage away with each passing year. When you think of American resilience and innovation, the Rust Belt should come to mind. This region, spanning Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York, and parts of New England, was the beating heart of American industrial might. It built the cars that America drove, the steel that built the nation's infrastructure, and created generational wealth for millions of working-class families. But beginning in the 1970s, that world began to crumble. To understand the Rust Belt's decline, you have to understand Black Monday. On September 19, 1977, Youngstown Sheet and Tube Company, one of the nation's largest steel manufacturers, announced it was closing its operations in Youngstown, Ohio. In a matter of weeks, the city lost 40,000 manufacturing jobs. Over $400 million in personal income evaporated. In some school districts, tax revenue plummeted by as much as 75%. Within the few years following this announcement, 400 businesses that depended on the steel industry collapsed. The city didn't just lose jobs, it lost its identity. Youngstown is not an isolated case. It's a harbinger of what's to come across the entire region. Detroit, once America's fourth largest city, tells an even more staggering story. In 1950, when the automotive industry was at its peak, Detroit had 1.8 million residents. Today, it's just over 670,000. That's a loss of more than a million people, an exodus nearly equal to the entire population of Boston. The population decline of 25% between 2000 and 2010 alone was described by demographers as considerably lower than expected. So many people had already left the city in prior decades. The pattern repeated itself across the region. Buffalo, Cleveland, and Pittsburgh each lost more than 40% of their populations over the last 4 decades. The deindustrialization of the Rust Belt wasn't some mysterious phenomenon. It was systematic. 3 major forces converged to devastate these communities. First was automation. Factories that once employed hundreds or thousands of workers could now operate with a fraction of the staff as robots and computerized systems took over repetitive manufacturing tasks. Second was outsourcing and offshoring. American companies discovered they could cut labor costs dramatically by moving production to countries with lower wages and fewer regulations. A manufacturing job that paid $25 an hour with benefits in Ohio could be replaced by one paying $2 an hour in Mexico or Southeast Asia. Third was the deliberate decline of unions. Without strong union protection, workers saw their wages stagnate while their job security evaporated. If the Rust Belt is America's post-industrial wasteland, Appalachia is something else entirely. This region, spanning 13 states from Kentucky to Pennsylvania, represents one of the most persistent pockets of poverty in the developed world. And unlike the Rust Belt, which at least had its golden age, Appalachia has been poor for generations. Today, Appalachia's median household income is just $61,688, which is only 82% of the US average. Meanwhile, poverty rates in certain countries exceed 20%, and in the most rural areas, it's far worse. Child poverty is especially alarming. Nearly 1 in 5 children in Appalachia lives below the poverty line, and for young adults ages 18 to 24, the figure jumps to 22.1%. Coal was supposed to be the region's economic savior, but beginning in 2008, the coal industry began collapsing. West Virginia's coal production dropped 38% from 2008 to 2015, with prices falling 71%. Employment in the mines plummeted from over 100,000 workers to fewer than 20,000 today. West Virginia now has the highest rate of drug abuse in the nation. The state's opioid crisis is directly connected to the economic devastation wrought by coal's collapse. At the same time, Poverty has driven obesity rates to among the nation's highest, which triggers cascading health problems. Most people think of California as a land of innovation, wealth, and endless opportunity, and to some degree, that's true for certain parts of California. But venture inland to the Inland Empire region, San Bernardino and Riverside counties, and you'll find communities devastated by the 2008 housing crisis that never truly recovered. The Inland Empire was hit harder by the 2008 housing crisis than almost anywhere else in America. Foreclosure rates soared, unemployment spiked, hundreds of thousands of families lost their homes. The region's economy, which had been fueled by construction and real estate speculation, collapsed overnight. 1 in 10 homes in the city of San Bernardino is vacant, compared to 1 in 14 for California overall. These aren't just statistics, they're visual reminders of failure on every street corner. Abandoned homes attract crime, drug use, and urban decay. A study by the Institute for Public Strategies found a strong connection between abandoned properties and crime in surrounding neighborhoods. While most of the forgotten places we've discussed are within the continental United States, Puerto Rico, a U.S. territory, represents perhaps the most dramatic example of a region abandoned by the U.S. government. Puerto Rico is the only U.S. territory with over 3 million people, and it has experienced an economic catastrophe unparalleled in modern American history. Between 2006 and 2017, the island endured a sustained recession where the economy contracted by 10%. During that same period, the island lost 10% of its population as people fled to the mainland, and unemployment reached nearly 15%. The poverty rate in Puerto Rico is 46%, more than 3 times the poverty rate of Mississippi, America's poorest state. The average household income is about 1/3 of the US average. For a territory that's technically part of the United States, Puerto Rico has third-world economic conditions. All of these economic statistics represent something far more profound: human suffering. The social and psychological toll of economic collapse is devastating and often overlooked. The connection between economic despair and drug addiction is direct and undeniable. When people lose their jobs, their homes, their sense of purpose, and their hope, they turn to substances as an escape. West Virginia's opioid crisis didn't emerge out of nowhere. It grew from the soil of economic devastation, job loss, and despair. Millions of Americans have become addicted to opioids. Thousands die each year from overdoses. Families are destroyed. Children are orphaned or placed in foster care. And most Americans don't realize that the roots of this crisis are economic. America's forgotten places represent a moral failure. They're communities that built the wealth of this nation, that sent their sons and daughters to fight its wars, that believed in the American promise of hard work and opportunity. And when their economic value declined, the nation moved on without them. The question now is whether America will acknowledge this failure and commit to genuine solutions, or whether these communities will continue to be forgotten. The challenge is enormous: reversing decades of disinvestment, restoring community identity, creating sustainable employment opportunities, and rebuilding shattered social institutions isn't easy. But it is necessary. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe.